Okay, first of all, sorry for the delay. We had a little hookup problems, but they've now been settled. So we're going to call the meeting to order. And first thing is welcome everybody to the City of Wildwood Board of Public Safety meeting. Today's date, Thursday, February 2nd, 2023. And we're starting just a few minutes after 6:30 p.m. So first item of business is roll call.
Marshall Jeffrey Bader,
Here.
Kevin Gleason,
Here.
Christopher Preston,
Here.
Vince Loyal,
Here.
Councilmember Dave Bertolino,
Here.
and Captain James Mundell, John Bradley. He's with us on Zoom, hopefully.
Is the speaker off or mic off?
Travis is, I guess he's on mute.
He is. So.
Well, I see John Bradley is with us on Zoom, I assume. And then we also have City Administrator Steve Cross with us on Zoom, and Rick Brown, Director of Public Works.
Thank you. Second item of business is the approval of minutes. We have a draft copy of the minutes from our last meeting, which was on January 5th, 2023. Each of you were provided with a copy of it and a chance to review. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the minutes.
There a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carried. Minutes have been approved. Next item of business is public comment. When we get into the public comment, we would like for everybody to state their name, the ward that you live in, and try to keep your comments professional and, under the 5-minute mark. As you approach the 5-minute mark, there will be a heads up given to you that you are running out of time. So thank you.
Chris Von Gruben. Okay, he's going to pass. Joe Delmore.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe Delmore, and I've lived in Ward 3 Wildwood for close to 33 years. I'm also a trustee of the Paradise Drive Promised Land subdivision. And as members of the Wildwood Board of Public Safety, I'm here before you to talk about a public safety matter that needs to be addressed. I think we would all agree that we want Wildwood to be a safe and desirable place to live. We want to live in peace with our neighbors and to enjoy our homes, our backyards, and our acreage. We like living here. As I understand it, the City of Wildwood permits anyone to discharge any sort of firearm, basically for recreational purposes, so long as it's more than 450 feet from the gun to any nearby residence. Given that the lethal distance for many of these firearms far exceeds 450 feet, I'm asking the board to recommend that distance be extended to 500 yards to the edge of a neighboring property line. This would include any acreage around where they live, not simply their front door or a window or any part of their house. The reasons for this are simple. It's a matter of safety. It's a matter of maintaining this area as a desirable place to raise your kids, to raise your family. It's a matter of maintaining high property values. We want to make this policy easier for Wildwood police to enforce. If someone wants to shoot for recreational or training purposes, there are indoor firing ranges that can accommodate them. We don't want to live in fear that someone first learning how to use a gun is firing away a mere 450 feet away. And we don't want to see young mothers in tears and in panic, knowing that their kids are outside playing while this is going on. This is Wildwood. We live here. We can do better. We must do better. Please recommend to the Wildwood City Council that they extend to 500 yards the distance between where a firearm can be legally discharged to the nearest property line. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Next speaker, please.
Larry McGinnis.
Good evening, Larry McGinnis, Ward 3. I am going to say I agree with everything that Joe just said. I just want to add one thing to it. What Joe just did was what I had proposed at the last month's meeting. In thinking about it more, and I appreciate all the information that was provided to us about what the surrounding communities are doing. But in thinking about it, as Joe just said, when you're giving a distance to the residents, then you're really taking away the rest of the property of the person on the other end of that weapon. It allows whoever is firing the weapon to use their property as well as whatever is mine up to my house. And it denies me the use of that property safely that is outside my house. Doesn't seem fair. So I think not trying to keep it from happening, but only make it safe. And I think 500 yards, 1,500 feet to the nearest property line seems like a safe alternative to what the code is now. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
Lisa Shirley.
Hi, Lisa Shirley from Ward 3. The right to bear arms is not the same as the right to shoot in your backyard. That right is granted through the city. Like in many other cases, you have the right to own a dog, but you don't have the right to let it disturb the peace or safety of the people around you. You have the right to throw parties, but again, you don't have the right to let it disturb the peace and safety of people around you. The right to shoot guns in your backyard should not be handled with special gloves, and it should not surpass the right to peace and safety for the residents of Wildwood. Last month, I gave context to our neighborhood situation and how it personally affected us. I gave examples where there were clear safety concerns with the discharge of weapons being close to where our children play. Noise levels also reached a point where my children had been woken up from their naps. My husband works from home and would be interrupted by gunfire consistently through work meetings. There's not a single spot in our house where you could escape from the sound of gunfire. All of this affects the physical and mental health of my family. After bringing our concerns to the city months ago, we were provided a report in December that ultimately stated there is nothing that our existing gun ordinance could do for our situation. And we were pointed to this meeting if we wanted assurance that this situation is not allowable in the future. Ultimately, after escalation, the city chose to address our situation through other means, but not through the existing gun ordinance due to its inadequacies. I don't want us being here today to ruin it for others, for other responsible gun owners. I want to show the blind spots that we encountered with this existing ordinance, so this can't happen to us or anyone else again. I would like to reiterate my request from last month that our ordinance be updated with definitions of listed areas to be protected. The way they are listed without definitions have left them open to interpretation. I would also like to add the listed item, any other building not owned by the shooter, to also be clarified, as it was left open to interpretation in our situation. I believe roads should be added to areas protected as well. While I request definitions to be added to areas protected, I'm also very supportive and really prefer the recommendations by my neighbors, suggesting that the distance required to discharge a gun be measured from adjacent property lines. I believe, unless there's written consent, would be a nice thing to add. This ensures that peace and safety is at utmost importance, but also encourages neighbors to come to an agreement if possible. I would like to comment in the case of any potential additions of city-approved shooting activity indoors or outdoors. that there be guidelines for the city that require proper ballistic protection, safety controls, and acoustic isolation, because as we learned in our situation, that leaving it open to interpretation does not always weigh in the favor of safety. When we look at outdoor shooting ranges like Bush Shooting Range in Defiance, we see an area that is clearly not residential. Yet concrete barriers surround the shooting area for additional protection because obviously stray bullets and misfire can happen. Surely we should have defined safety precautions instead of leaving it open to interpretation to what is okay with shooting activity in a backyard. I'm thankful for you meeting with us today, for hearing our concerns. I appreciate any further consideration you give to adjusting our ordinance and to truly ensure the peace and safety of Wildwood residents.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
William Shirley.
Good evening. I'm William Shirley from Ward 3. I would just like to emphasize my support of the previous speakers, Joe and Larry, and my wife Lisa. I support everything that they said. I would like to double click on the points around permits and written permission to shoot. I feel like that one of the points made was giving the police the ability to enforce the ordinance that are on the books. And that is really at the forefront of what we're asking. And I think that permits and needing written permission from adjacent properties is a good way of further enforcing that and allowing neighbors to work together, come to a collective agreement. That is all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Rob Knowles.
Good evening. I'm Rob Knowles from Bridle Trails West, just down the street here. Couple of comments that I want to bring forth that I guess we need to see if there's a distinction between a gun range and somebody shooting in their backyard for personal use. I completely understand the concern of the folks that have previously spoke about a gun range with the amount of noise, the amount of people, the amount of ammunition that could be shot at a gun range is obviously quite a bit more than it would be as a residential setting or a homeowner shooting in their backyard. So if there were to be any action, I would certainly suggest that there's a distinction between those. As far as the 500 yards versus 450 feet, I think 500 yards, if you're talking ammunition, if you're talking high-powered ammunition, 500 yards is still not adequate for anything. So I think that the 500 yards is just a number that has been pulled out of the air to be thrown in front of this commission for for a number to be different than the current ordinance. The current Wildwood ordinance, I believe from what I've read so far is pretty close to Chesterfield's, which is fairly on the west side of Chesterfield. The demographics, the lot size and so forth are pretty much the same. So my question would be, and I know you guys may not be able to answer, but would be how many complaints have you had so far in Wildwood's history of people shooting? How many incidents have there been? Has there been anybody injured? The research that I've done so far has been very little to, if not none. There's been some noise complaints. Obviously, this issue is obviously probably one of the biggest ones that Wildwood has dealt with so far. But again, if there is a change in rules, can we deal with just this individual? Can we deal with this individual situation versus changing the rules for the entire city? I think far too much in today's society, we're trying to jump at the gun. We're trying to change laws. We're trying to change everything for the entire population when really there's only a handful of people or only a few people that are being affected by it. So I'd encourage the board to take a look at that and understand that there are an enormous amount of people out here, some in the back row here, and there was going to be an enormous amount of more people, but we didn't feel like it would be something that would be very appropriate to pack this place full of all of the residents that oppose this. But again, there's an awful lot of residents that shoot in their backyard, that shoot at their property, very safe manner for a very, brief period of time, whether they're sighting in their guns, whether they're just having some fun with their kids for a couple hours or an hour on a weekend, whatever the case is. And if this rule were to change to this proposed 500 yards, I would imagine that it would put probably almost everybody in Wildwood out of the business of being able to shoot. So I think it's far overreaching with what is proposed. And my suggestion is keep the current ordinance in place. And certainly if there is a change, if it is a quote gun range, that's totally different. I understand. I would not want to live next to a gun range with all of the shooting that goes on. But for personal shooting, I think it should remain the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
That was the last one that I have. If anybody is back there and they want to bring a comment card my way. Okay, you can go ahead and speak. Mac Johnson.
Hello. Mac Johnson. I live just behind you guys here in Cherry Hills. I've got 2 young boys, my wife, we all live back there. Utilize the property in question a number of times to shoot for a number of reasons. One, for work. I own a company. We help work with defense vendors to develop and optimize weapon systems for Special Operations Command. So, and a lot of that, we're going and gathering information, which we can do on a short range like that one there. And take that information and we can bake that into new solutions that we're going to see on the market, right? I've shot at a lot of ranges. I was in the Army. I know what all types of gunfire from all different directions sounds like in all different environments. And I can say that when you're in an environment like that, that's closed in, they've got a really good hard structure space there as far as the backdrop, completely safe. All typical firearm safety rules apply. It's very well monitored. And so the idea that rounds are traveling past that backstop freely through the wooded area into the residential areas, I haven't seen any way that could be possible unless done intentionally. The owner, he monitors that range. It's not a public range, right? It's closed. So only people that he trusts and knows to come out there are able to utilize it. Again, I've gone out and shot with him. There's a safety precaution going out there. Everything has, we understand what we're shooting at, what the purpose is. And like I said, it's not a long range. It's pretty small. So like you're right there standing in front of that backdrop. I do know that when you fire, the way the audible sounds will travel and reverberate off of trees. It can be frightening, and that does travel through. And I know what that sounds like, so I could see how people could think, hey, there's actual rounds traveling through nearby. It's not the case. We would have to see actual munitions being pulled out of the ground to show that the projectiles have actually left that area. And from what I've seen, there's just no evidence of that whatsoever. You can see in the backdrop, everything stays in there. We're not seeing ricochets. You're not hearing ricochets, which is something that you would typically hear if that were the case, or if that was a concern. Everything goes right into that dirt and mud backdrop. Otherwise, I think that, again, this is probably a little bit of an overreach, probably a great overreach. Again, for somebody who has private property, well within the law and the ordinance, and who is managing that property very well and utilizing it for good cause, for citizens here, and then obviously now under some other activities that we're able to manage there in a safe way. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Do we have any more guest speakers?
No.
We're closing the meeting for public comments. Moving on to the next item. It's classified as for information, and there are currently no items on the agenda for that. Next item is old business. And on the agenda that lists as proposed modifications, firearms regulation, and documents that are currently under review regarding what some of the cities around the city of Wildwood do. Okay,
Mr. Chair.
next item. Yes, sir. Mr. Cross.
Thank you, sir. I just wanted to give a real brief update with regards to the main focus of tonight's meeting. The primary focus of tonight's meeting is with regards to modifications to our firearm regulations as they exist right now. We've had a number of speakers talk on various their opinions in terms of what they'd like to see or not see in any kind of regulations. But I do want to give the board an update in the similar manner that we've updated the council. The actions that were being taken that precipitated all these conversations with regards to weapons being fired on this range, this shooting range, those can no longer occur under any circumstances. So it's a moot point at this point. So no matter where this gentleman determines where his primary residence is, there will be no more shooting off of the 109 property or any other property. As we explored this in depth, there are a number of issues that were reviewed thoroughly and vetted by many folks here at the city, and so that won't happen any longer now. And as it exists right now, there are no sales of firearms that can occur there. That may change because the governor signed some legislation back in August of 2022 that could change that. But until there's a nexus between the city ordinances and the state statutes, right now that's precluded as well. So I want to make sure that anyone that is participating or is interested in this particular topic to understand that there will not be any further shooting at all. From that range or any other range within the city of Wildwood. From this point forward, as it relates to that matter, it's now determining whether a change or changes need to be made to the regulations themselves. So I wanted to make sure that the committee was fully apprised of that situation and any of the residents that have taken an interest in this subject as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cross, for that update. Next item of business is new business. We have no items on the agenda. We also have no items on not ready for action. We move into the other. We have no items on agenda for other topics. At this point, we will take a motion to adjourn.
Can I ask a quick clarification question?
No, it's.
I'm just curious, what he said, that there's no shooting just in that property or just throughout the entire city of Wildwood?
Is there a point of clarification allowed?
I'll ask the question, essentially echoing this gentleman's question. Yeah, I'm a bit confused as well. As it appears as though that specific concern has been addressed by the city. Do we continue to have valid reasons to consider revision of the firearm rules or?
So, Mr. Chair, if clarification is needed on what I just said, I'm happy to provide that clarification. The clarification of no shooting on this particular site is specific to that site. That is not a broad-based decision. It doesn't affect other practice areas, target shooting areas, or anything like that. That is strictly as it relates to this particular resident and the particular property that this resident lives on. However, as I stated earlier, then that conversation that addressed that one specific resident has then led to a number of comments being made during public comment that it is the desire of residents to take a look at our firearms regulations in its totality as it relates to the city of Wildwood. And that's the subject matter that this board would be addressing going forward in terms of distances, types of weapons, hours of operation, and anything else that this board considers relevant to this topic. But and that's the subject matter going forward that would be addressed by this board. However, again, point of clarification, the stoppage, if you will, of shooting on this particular range is that it only is for this one particular resident on this one particular piece of property. And there's no decisions been made for any other property within the city of Wildwood at this point.
Mr. Berlin.
Yeah, Steve,
Yes,
can I
sir.
ask a follow-up question to you?
Yes, sir.
If someone were to bring to the city an application for a business license for a shooting range, what is our response at this time?
A shooting range is not an accessory use for any piece of property within the city of Wildwood, and that application for a shooting range would be denied.
Thanks, Steve.
Yes, sir.
Thank you for the clarification point, Mr. Cross. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried, meeting's adjourned. Thank you for your attendance.